Howdy Mage fans, Puka here. Today is the second compilation of recordings from last year's PAX Unplugged, consisting of 5 interviews Terry Robinson did on the expo hall floor. As with the last batch, some of the content may now be out of date, but hopefully you'll still enjoy the lively spirit of the interactions and learn a thing or two about some games and their creators. Without further ado, the audio.
Hi, Mage fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson with Mage the Podcast. And joining me right now at PAX Unplugged is noted game designer, developer, publisher, and all about hero in the RPG industry, Eloy Lasanta. We have talked previously about Eloy's work in Part-Time Heroes, a game that finally answered the question of, I'm a superhero, but I also have a PTA meeting. How do I mechanize those two? And it was, to me, a breakthrough in that regard. Eloy, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've been doing very well. This is my Saturday voice at a con, though, just in case I sound different for anybody who knows what I actually sound like. The game is called Part-Time Gods. It is one of my favorite designs that I've ever done in a game because it is exactly the thing that I set out to make. I would say, well,
how dare you have an artistic vision that you achieved?
Well, and what I will say is because there are so many games, even some of my own, that I started with one idea and it morphed into something else that is also cool, but it was not the initial thought that I had. Whereas with Part-Time Gods, second edition, I would say even first edition was slightly shy of what I really, really wanted out of it. But the second edition of the game is honestly, it's probably going to be my magnum opus at the end of the day.
And what do you feel that Part-Time Gods fulfills? What promise do you think it fulfills, or what genre expectation or theme and mood do you think it fulfills that other games maybe struggle a little bit more to?
I think it's pretty much exactly what you said. It's the ability for not just the narrative or for the players to think that it's fun for outside things to kind of invade, the adventure. It's that everything is the system behind the chakra system that is used for the game. It actually propels the story forward. It makes those things happen, as opposed to just kind of trying to make it up as you go along. Okay. The system actually tells you now is when that stuff is going to happen. And honestly, just the variety of different concepts that you can do within Part-Time Gods. Like, I've seen Part-Time Gods being played to do like Percy Jackson type games, to do American God type games, to do all kinds of stuff. Superheroes, you can kind of do superheroes with Part-Time Gods. But like, it is literally about, I'm trying to do all these super heroic things, go on quests and attain, divine glory. But, my brother's in jail. I need to get bail money, and unless you're the god of money, you have to have a job, it's kind of funny.
And games that involve gods, frequently we're used to playing games where there is a penalty for failure, whereas
Correct.
Games where you have such extremal powers, what are the penalties for success? I can literally bust my brother out of jail, but now I have the justice apparatus that is breathing down my neck, and maybe my divine patronage isn't too thrilled with that.
And you don't have as much money. Like, that means you have to go to work a bunch. You have to do overtime in order to make your money back on that. But honestly, the coolest thing about Part-Time Gods is for those people who actually end up playing it over time, the way that the game works is you start at a level of spark, a divine spark of 1, and every time you go up, there's a certain number of connections that you can have to the mortal world. Okay. And as the more powerful you get, you have to start cutting those connections. So if you have your family, your friends, your brother in jail, or your sister, or your wife, or whatever, eventually, to attain godhood, you have to cut them off, which is a devastating thing when it happens. I love hearing stories about it at people's tables where they're just like, I had to basically have no connection to my brother anymore, in the game, and it hurt. My character was in tears having to do this. Like, it's one of those really powerful things.
And it's not rare, especially in urban fantasy games or genres around that, to have some sort of mechanic that says, as you go up, you lose your humanity. Yeah. It seems what Part-Time Gods tries to do is be like, no, we are going to show you what that looks like. Yes. It is not merely that you have difficulty relating to people or you get -1 on social rolls. Right. But no, you're not going to Thanksgiving this year.
Correct. It is, you are cutting yourself off from everything. And in the system, there's a thing called failings. And essentially you take those and it's a reflection as to how you feel about the thing that you lost. And there's things like hatred, power hoarding, thrill seeking, getting really morbid about stuff. And it literally starts to change you as a person. which is, again, one of my favorite things that I did with the system. The vast array of options that are available, especially as we've started to release more source books for the game. In the last couple of years, we've released games where you can play gods with from different theologies and different
pantheons
and stuff, as well as the ability to play as like giants, the ability to play as gorgons and minotaur. Like you can play as mythological creatures beside the gods, and it's been like a dream of mine to actually get this game out in the form that it's in.
I feel like we've been having kind of a renaissance in cultural representation in game pantheons.
Yeah.
So they're sacred ideas that every culture is going to have, and maybe we don't necessarily hit on that immediately, but you might have something like the Theoi or the Dodecatheon or the Manituo or something. Yeah. Is there a pantheon or cultural group that you're particularly pleased that your game represents, that you really feel that didn't get the spotlight?
I think honestly, because my game doesn't actually deal with specific pantheons from mythology. That's more like Scion's thing. But the idea of part-time gods is that you are the new gods, right? We're creating our own brand new mythology. And honestly, what that does is it allows people who were probably underrepresented, not even probably, were underrepresented in a lot of our pop culture when it comes to gods and pantheons and whatnot. It allows them to now be the gods. Okay. And we're creating our own stories now with that, which is what Part-Time Gods is. It's really cool.
Now, this is not the only game that Third Eye Games has here.
Correct.
And the thing that literally stopped me in my tracks, not just because I was incredibly tired, but because of the wonderful cover design, was you have what looks to be a lushly illustrated, because I didn't actually have a chance to read it cover to cover yet, Afrofuturist sci-fi game.
Yes.
What is that title? And why are you the only one who seemingly figured out how to do this in an era where I think I've seen at least 4 Kickstarters?
The interesting... Okay, so the name of the game is Run, and it was released actually in 2021. It was designed by myself, Jerry Grayson, and Misha Bushjager. The three of us got together, and we decided that we were going to try and bring something new to the space, the role-playing space, because there really hadn't been any Afrocentric sci-fi games. And there have been a few since we released ours, but we released it right before the pandemic, and then there was no marketing and whatnot because the world shut down. I feel like it really missed its spot, but it is one of those also an amazing game that I got to be a large part of. I will say I can't even take full credit for that. Part-Time Gods was all me.
Okay,
but Run wasn't completely me, but I am so proud of that game. Way more than I probably should be, because I contributed really important parts, but I love the parts I didn't contribute to, which is really cool.
Besides mere theming and veneer, what do you feel separates Afrofuturism as an idea in science fiction from maybe the previous waves of science fiction? We can go back to 1930s weird science fiction, and then quote-unquote hard science fiction, which basically means white men with physics degrees. And then we had a reaction to that where suddenly Octavia Butler is like, hold my beer, and Ursula K. Le Guin kind of said, no, the soft sciences will have their own revolutions as well. Where does Afrofuturism fit into that? For listeners, as a reminder, Third Eye Games is largely red text on a white background. My skin may be whiter than that. for those who haven't seen me in person.
I think that the good thing about Afrofuturism is that what it does is it decouples the setting from the idea of colonialism. Okay. And it removes that from it, and it's like, what would happen without that? Okay. And allowing people to just kind of be. You know what I mean? So, that would be my thought process. I'm sure there's way philosophers who could say better stuff, but that's how I've always defined it, is that it removes the idea that people need to own things and whatnot. Like in Run, it's actually all about, because we actually call it a post-apotheosis sci-fi game. Okay. Because in our game, in our universe, there's a moment in the universe where everybody is one, and there's just this piece that is just the best thing ever, and it's for everybody. And then a virus comes in, starts messing with that, and then in the game you play members of a group called Jali, which are essentially like our Jedi. Yeah. But essentially you become peacekeepers trying to go and clean up all the mess, so maybe one day we'll all be able to just be one again. And you don't really see that in non-Afrofuturist. Like if you look at other sci-fi games, and I'm not going to name anything because I'm not trying to disparage anybody's creativity. But there are a lot of others that they go in a very different direction.
Yes.
So is what I'll say.
And part of, though, developing a genre and transforming it to something for the table is you need to come up with a visual language and a visual aesthetic. As I said, lushly illustrated.
Yeah.
And the thing that annoys the shit out of me is when someone is like, oh, my new game is like if Joss Whedon wrote a Star Wars movie, and I'm like, I care about neither of those. You have in no way helped me. So part of it is coming up with that visual language and the set of cultural comparisons.
Yeah.
For people who find this interesting and want to go beyond an appreciation of Parliament Funkadelic and Sun Ra albums, where do you think we should start to start figuring out that visual language?
Right. I mean, honestly, oh wow. I think that question might be bigger than me. I don't even know how to answer that.
Pardon me. What? Let me rephrase that. Were there any inspirations for you when you were trying to stylistically come up with this, or was this a design process that kind of started with a blank canvas?
Okay. We just knew where we wanted to go.
Okay.
We weren't necessarily. What we were trying to do was take from our biggest influences, Star Trek, Star Wars, the same influences that everybody else has, right? And trying to see what we could do that might be different. Might be slightly different. Like there's still sci-fi adventures in this game, but they're just different.
Okay.
You know, it's all about helping people. It's all about engaging with these strange, different species of alien, exploration. And yes, other games have all of that too. So I'm, again, not disparaging any other game, but I feel like the combination of the lore and the history with the really awesome mechanics that Outrun has with it that allow you to kind of create almost any kind of character, I think really kind of puts it above board, and it's really, really dope.
If you had to say that Third Eye Games kind of had a unifying vision of game design, what would you say that is?
I would say that my unifying vision of game design is that nothing is unified. I literally love creating everything under the sun, anything I can. And that was one of the things that I wanted to do right when I started designing, is I said, I don't want to be known as the guy who does X.
Okay.
I want to be known as the guy who can do anything. So my first game was like, action horror. My second game was ninjas. My next game was gods. My next game was for kids. My next game was superheroes. My next game was sci-fi.
Okay.
My next game was demon worshippers. And they all have different tones. They all have different moods. They all have different mechanics.
Okay.
And that's what I've always prided myself on in this industry. Even if I am, as you said, an unsung hero of the industry, I'm essentially like your favorite game designer's favorite game designer. And I'm okay with that, right?
Like the Fred Armisen of game design, yes.
And I'm okay with that. I love Fred Armisen. So yeah, I mean that's kind of, and I like the space that I live in because it gives me the freedom to do whatever I want and not get typecast into anything. I also get hired for like a ton of different things, which is fun. Like I got hired for a comedy game. I got hired for a sci-fi, little really deep, gross game. I got hired for a serial killer game. I got hired for fun, sci-fi games. Like it's fun for me to just be able to just play. I get to play around with other people's worlds too, which is fun.
So we got to talk with a tiny bit of depth with two of your games.
Yeah.
For people who are interested in basically anything that's just not traditional F20 fantasy, do you have any like one or two sentence pitches for any of the other games that you have that are currently in that people could currently go out and buy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, so Ninja Crusade is probably one of my other favorites that I have. So Ninja Crusade is you play ninja from rival clans who are forced to work together. You have to fight against the Empire. The Emperor is called the Ninja Crusade, hence the name, and is trying to wipe out all the ninja, but you have to work with your enemy in order to survive. And the game is really dope because it uses D10 pools and has this crazy combat system where like there's a whole bunch of like counters and jutsus and it emulates what an anime combat battle is like. Not a Dragon Ball Z, not the one where it takes 10 episodes to do one thing. But like if you watch a really good episode of like Basilisk or Naruto where there's like high-speed combat and people are like outsmarting each other and interjecting into each other's moves and stuff. That's exactly what Ninja Crusade does. It's really, really dope. I would say the other game that really actually has done quite well here at PAX has been Sins of the Father.
Okay.
Sins of the Father is a game where you come of age, you turn 18, and your parents say, oh, by the way, before you were born, we sold your soul to a Dark Lord.
Who among us hasn't? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. As you do. I'm a parent.
Exactly.
I've sold all three of mine.
I was on the receiving end of that.
And now you have to work off your debt to this Dark Lord.
Okay.
And that's the game. That one was actually, it was one game that I wrote back in 2016, and it was nominated for Best Game at the Ennies. It did not win. It got beat by some other bigger game by a bigger publisher or whatever. But you know what? To know that I wrote that game and it got nominated, just that is enough. Like, it was really, really a lot of fun.
So are you telling me a game where a younger generation is saddled with seemingly impossible debt by those who came before them for their own personal benefit is resonating
it's
with
almost
today's
like
game
it's real
market?
life. But no, the cool thing about it, too, is that there's actually generational rules.
Okay.
So as soon as you are done with your current characters in that game, you can pass it on to your next character.
Okay.
So it's one of those fun things. And it's like, it's not even a big game. It's actually a small game, but you can get a lot out of it.
I had a clever follow-up question. It has completely escaped me. But thank you so much for your time. This is going to go out at some point in the future. If people are interested in looking at and buying your products, where do you recommend we direct our attention?
That would be thirdeyegames.net.
Okay. Link in the show notes.
That is the place. If you type in .com by accident, it's fine. I own both. So you'll be redirected. It's great. It's fine. But yeah, thirdeyegames.net.
Do you also distribute through Studio 2 or IPR or Drive-Thru-RPG?
Yes, we do all three of those, actually. Studio 2 is our main one for stores.
Okay.
Drive-Thru-RPG, obviously, is where we do a lot of our PDF sales. Okay. We actually do some IPR, not as much, because even though we are indie, our games are not as indie as the games that IPR sells.
Your games are recognizable in that they have rule set, as opposed to the mere idea of a rule. Where it's like, rule 1, sit blankly at an index card and imagine a 13th century German philosopher.
I mean,
and it's just like, wait. You're like, I know lyric games are a thing, but I don't like when I feel like I'm being punked by a game.
It's funny because it's true.
Yes.
But no, and honestly, it's because my games are more indie published, but they are a little bit more traditional in their presentation.
I stick with Robin Law's rule of you're no longer an indie publisher the moment you have a full-time employee that is not the owner.
There you go. I'm not there yet.
Okay, you're not there yet. So we're still supporting indie publishers.
It's still just me.
Okay.
I'm good.
And if we're interested in following your work in particular, how can we do that?
I mean, I'm everywhere. If you look at Eloy the Saint, you can look that up. Okay. I even have some YouTube videos and stuff that I did a couple of years ago. But yeah, you can definitely follow me. You can also check with, I actually teach game design through Central Michigan University. So if you check their CLGS program, you might even be able to have one-on-ones and have like 6 weeks of training and stuff with me, which is really cool.
I think my first exposure to your work was RPG Design Panelcast, I think, at some point.
Very cool.
Yeah. But Eloy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Terry.
Hi, Mage fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson with Mage the Podcast. And joining me today is industry stalwart. I don't know if you count as an industry legend or if that's just giving you too much hype to start, but at least industry stalwart.
Absolutely.
Chris Pramas, president and founder of Green Ronin Publishing. You may remember Green Ronin from the Fantasy Age system, the Modern Age system that all works off of the creatively named Age system. Mutants and Masterminds, we've discussed the Expanse RPG before. We attempted to do something for Cthulhu Awakens. We've talked about your games before. Chris, how you doing and how's your PAX Unplugged so far?
I'm doing good. I'm on the end of a crazy 3-convention tour. Started in Germany, went to the UK, and is ending here. So it's been a long trip, fun. PAX has been good, other than a little sickness in the company. So all good.
Hopefully not like the spiritual sense.
No.
Hopefully, okay. And my simple question is, what is it like operating a publisher in 2024? You've managed to do it seemingly successfly.
Yeah.
At this point, for when was, I don't recall off the top of my head when Green Ronin was founded, but
2000. So
okay.
In a month or two, we're going to be 25 years old.
Soon it'll be able to rent a car.
Yeah, that's right.
So good for good for it.
Yeah. I mean, everything's changing all the time, I guess, is how it is. Since I got into the industry in the early 90s, there's been all sorts of waves of technological and game design change. 1993, when I started as a freelancer, nobody was selling PDFs except like Hero Games on 3.5 discs. And when print on demand came around, it looked terrible. You could spot it from across the room. So now it's just like way, way easier to be a publisher, which is great, but also means that you're competing against way, way more other publications and games. So that also makes it more challenging.
I would describe the Green Ronin model as something to the tune of find people who are very good at what they do and then pay them money to do the thing they're very good at.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, we empower our devs quite a bit. So, like Modern Age, that was really Malcolm's project, and I let him run with it, He did some things that, were a little more complicated than I might have done, but there was no reason not to let him go for it and see how people liked it. And Modern Age did well, so people liked it.
You have a number of different lines that kind of hit a number of different beats in kind of the genre space. Is there anything that has surprised you either with how well it's done, or you thought that a particular project or property would do better than it wound up doing?
Good question.
Because the one that struck out to me was, I was surprised at the sheer number of people who kept bringing up mutants and masterminds.
Oh,
and that to me was clearly a legacy product. It was just for people who were super into it. It's in 6th edition or whatever it is.
Third.
Sorry, apologies. But then a new edition came out, and just the sheer amount of excitement around it was just kind of surprising to me.
Well, the whole way Mutants and Mastermind started is that Steve Kenson, who designed it, he had written a superhero city for another publisher, and that publisher had difficulties and wasn't going to publish it. And so this was, 2001 or so. So I just said to him offhandedly, hey, if you design me a D20 superheroes game, I'll publish your city.
Okay.
And so, we didn't imagine that 22 years later, the game would still be one of our primary games.
Yep.
And into its 3rd edition. Next year, we're going to have the Valiant Comics RPG that we're doing, which is
wonderful,
powered by Mutants and Masterminds, just like the DC game we did in 2010. So, I wouldn't have guessed at the time. It's had legs.
Do you feel that there is a direction, system-wise, most of your games are going, in that they're getting easier or in that they're getting complicated? Is it important to you as a publisher to have a breadth of mechanical and setting complexity to it? What is your view on kind of balancing those factors across lines?
So, yes, the direction we've moved towards since Dragon Age came out is doing more games that use the adventure game engine, aka Age. Basically, I designed Dragon Age, and when that came out, people said, hey, this system is cool. Are you going to do other things with it?
Okay.
And then as the years have gone on, we've done more and more things with it. So now we have Blue Rose, our romantic fantasy game, and Modern Age, and The Expanse, our upcoming 5th season game uses it. We've got Cthulhu Awakens, and so they all share a core, so that if you play one Age game, you've learned how to play all of them. But each one is also customized to the genre or the property. So they all have subsystems or different iterations of things that provide the uniqueness. So it's nice in that, you can easily pick up one Age game if you played another, but we do try to make sure each one sings in its own way, if you know what I mean.
Blue Rose was one of the first games that I was exposed to from the Green Ronin family of properties, and I appreciated the fact that it was probably the first game I had encountered that did not shy away from romance as an idea in games. Do you feel that it still kind of has that position, or do you feel that the market for romance or games of that type that include that kind of emotional valence has started to fill in more?
Well, certainly. There's lots of games now that have gotten into that territory. I think Blue Rose is a little unique in that we're doing romantic fantasy as a genre. So, you can have emotional romance, I guess you could say, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like physical relationships. Now
it does courtly romance. It does,
different things.
The other thing I've seen that Green Ronin has been doing is what looked to me like zines.
Yes.
Much smaller publications, maybe more specialized things. I remember backing the, the Expanse Transportation Union project.
Yeah.
What kind of new experiments or adventures in gaming have you been trying as a firm?
Well, we started a small format magazine called Engine.
Okay.
And it's basically like the magazine of the adventure game Engine.
Okay.
And it is an outlet for us to test new ideas, to have small articles that you couldn't publish as a source book or something like that. People who are into the system, it's really great if you're into system hacking. It's got a lot of ideas in it. So issue 1 is out now. Issue 2 is written but going into production. And then we also did 3 zines for Cthulhu Awakens called Dread Crawls. Those are basically books with tables and procedures to generate things like strange places and, cosmic horror scenarios and so on. And they're in support of Cthulhu Awakens, but there's no game stats in them, so they're also useful for any mythos-based RPG.
And it's interesting to see those, because that to me is, as someone who is constantly on drive-through RPG, I am amazed at the number of times I see a mithril cellar or an adamantine cellar that is 25 urban fantasy tables or 175 magical items to find in a wizard library.
Yeah.
So have you been pleased with how those small format items have been moving?
Yeah. It's basically places for us to have a little fun. And they've been selling well. Engine in particular, it provides a little connecting tissue to the various age games, which is nice. And just like as an old punk rocker, like zines are in my blood. So when RPGs zines like became a thing, I was like, oh, zines.
The other thing to me as a non-trivial number in our fan base have tried to do their own publishing in some way. The zine to me was always that way of being like, how did you get your start? Oh, I wrote into Dragon Magazine a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Or something like that. Is that also providing a recruiting ground for you to find or discover new talent?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, for a long time, blogs killed zines because people took their zines online and made blogs out of them. So it's funny now that it's
And now blogs have been killed by the fact that the internet consists of 4 companies that are just filled with posts from the other 3 companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. To quote Cory Doctorow.
Yeah.
Okay. So for people who are into urban fantasy, is there 1 or 2 projects that you think we should know about? Or is there anything upcoming in that space that you think people generally into urban fantasy or more contemporary games would be interested in?
Well, Modern Age is the best bet for urban fantasy.
Okay.
Modern Age basically tries to cover a lot of ground, and it's got all the parts in it for you to build urban fantasy out of. It can also do a lot of other things. But basically, if you have the core book and the Modern Age companion, that's kind of what you need to do urban fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say the target for Cthulhu Awakens is, and maybe how it differs from the approximately 7 trillion other Cthulhu games out there?
We just kind of really want to do our own take on the mythos.
Okay.
So it's decidedly not Call of Cthulhu with a different rule system.
Okay.
We really try to take our...
I'm not going to go through 32 characters in my attempt to get rid of the Mask of Nerithotep.
No.
Okay.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
So like one of the big differences is how we decide to treat mythos and that whole idea of like insanity in the game. So we kind of felt like it can sometimes trivialize real mental health issues. What we have in Cthulhu Awakens is a system called alienation.
Okay.
And the idea behind that is as you learn more about the mythos, you are learning to think more like an alien entity and less like a human being.
Okay.
So the more you understand the mythos, the more disconnected from humanity you become, and you start to manifest what are called distortions, which is you just losing your humanity. And we just really preferred that approach to it.
Does it have a general, more action approach? Is it more research-based? What mood or theme would you feel that it hits?
It could do either, but there's definitely action involved in it because the age system is good at that. It's got a whole stunt system. So if you want to do, pulpy Cthulhu stuff, you could definitely do that.
The other thing I notice is the subtitle is Across a Weird Century.
Yeah.
Cthulhu games frequently start specifically on February 1st, 1912 for some reason, and end exactly, seemingly, at the end of World War II.
Right.
Do you extend beyond that range?
So yeah, basically the Weird Century is like, about 100 years ago to about now.
Okay.
And so the core game covers it all. We've done some scenarios, like we've got one set in the Cold War, the quick start adventures in World War II, and we kind of bounce around. And that also shows up in the game. Instead of all Eldritch tomes, like sometimes it's like a creepy social network, instead of a falling apart book, but it still has that mythos connection that's going to cause problems for you.
Got it. So it sounds like it extends well beyond the 4 corners of cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for continuing to lead Green Ronin and acting as a home for lost White Wolf authors. Thank you so much for that. Otherwise, I feel like they would just be...
We have joked about that.
Yeah, they'd have a sign that says, we'll create RPG systems for food standing on street corners.
Yeah.
And if we're interested in getting any of your products or making purchases with you, where's the best place to do that?
Well, go to greenronin.com.
Excellent.
You can also find our PDFs on Drive Through RPG and some of our print-on-demand stuff as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Links in the show notes. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Hi, Mage fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson with Mage the Podcast, and this is day 3 of PAX Unplugged, and I am talking with Eric Portney of the Alexandria Games Library, the organization through which I have had the pleasure of running games. As a side note, once I saw your name, I was hoping you also were in charge of feedback, and we could just call that area Portnoy's Complaints. And only I think that is funny.
Well, that is something I've had to deal with my entire life. Technically, it's Portney, not Portnoy, but I still get that association. That's fine. There are a number of people, and you can tell basically how old they are when they come up to you and say, "So, what kind of complaints do you have?"
That's a little on the nose. I want it to be a little bit off from that. My surname's Robinson. They played Here's to You, Mrs. Robinson 3 times at my brother's wedding, which seems excessive. But what is the Alexandria Game Library as a concept, and what does it do at conventions?
So the Alexandria RPG Library is a 501c3 nonprofit charity organization, and we're educational purpose where our mission is to share, preserve, and make sure that it's always available the broad history and tapestry of role-playing games. We have a collection of books that span the past 50 years, going back to the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, all through to the newest books that are just coming out today, the latest indie creators and indie publishers. All told, we have roughly 8,000 or 9,000 books in the collection total. But what we do is to make that collection available to people, we take a sampling of that and we go to conventions, usually game conventions like PAX. We're here at PAX Unplugged, as well as the other PAXs, PAX East and PAX West, but also some Comic-Cons, special interest conventions like a horror convention, anime convention, things like that, where we take and tailor the kinds of role-playing games that are in our collection. We make a representative sampling that would target the audience at those events so that we can expose the broad range in the area that would be relevant to that particular convention, and we make those books available for people to sit down and read, explore, learn about, and even use them to run games themselves at the conventions.
And listeners, it is difficult to convey the breadth and volume of material. At home in my personal library, I have something like 88 linear feet of book, of RPG. But this is just across literal decades. This is I guess by definition, a century-spanning collection.
Yes.
And it is weird to hear about a game that I only heard in hush whispers. And not only do you have it, but you have 2 copies of it, and then you have the follow-up errata book that the author did as a one-off 15 years later.
Yes, indeed. We have some very extreme curiosities that have found their way into the library, and there's a couple I can point out. But in general, we try to have a representative collection that is not just the main core books of the system. We want to show the weird stuff where a publisher decided, well, let's try this completely crazy idea and see if we can make a book out of that, and see, it only published 100 copies. Well, I guess that wasn't something that was so great. But one of those copies has found its way into our library here, and that's part of the legacy of the hobby, and we can share that and continue to have that live for people who want to explore.
And the other advantage is it is not a museum collection. You have multiple copies. That way 2 people can play RuneQuest at the same time, or 2 people...
Indeed, and for some systems, we have up to 5 or 6 books so that the entire table can have that player's handbook available for them, not just the GM. Because if it's an old system and no one's heard of it before, it would be useful to have those aids available, even if it's something like Tales from the Vagabond that hasn't been around in print for 30 years. We'll have 4 or 5 copies of that available if we're going to run the game with it, just because we want to make sure people have a good time with it and don't feel frustrated, and are welcomed into these classic systems and have them have a chance to live and breathe again.
It kind of reminds me, Philadelphia, we have Old Christ Church, and the baptistry there is almost 400 years old, and it is still used, because that's the point.
Yes.
What's the point of putting this thing behind glass?
Yeah. Well, here in Philadelphia, you might be familiar with the Please Touch Museum.
Yeah.
So we take that aesthetic on with our books as well. We are not a museum. We want these things to live and be used. So we have copies that might, it might be a $300 Kickstarter that is something prized and beautiful. It's a game we want it to be played. We have no reservations about having that book checked out to people at the show, have them use it to run games. I even have a checkout system here at our conventions where you can take the book and even take it back to your hotel room during the weekend. And as long as it gets back to us by the end of the show, everything is fine. So we are very trusting of the community, and I think that we've been rewarded by that. And very, very rarely are we ever burned, and we think that it's a resource that is worth that risk.
And there is that kind of weird mirroring where the more trusting you are of people, seemingly the more they're going to act worthy of that trust. Now, the other half of your operation, at least from my vantage, seems to be the actual running of games.
Yes, indeed.
How does that work?
So a lot of people who browse the library say, oh, I remember running this game 20 years ago. I would love to see a game of this again. Well, that's the lead for us to encourage them. Well, you can. Why don't you run the game with us? Mm-hmm. Here is our onboarding process of how we can get you involved with the library itself, so that when we go to conventions, that you can come with us. We can provide you a way into the show so that you have all the resources you would need to make that game happen. We would help set you up with a table, schedule time, give you the support, give you supplies you might need, dice, paper, printouts, but we would also help do the reservation process and get people to your table so you're going to actually have players at the event. Usually, if you come and help us, we ask for you to run pretty much a game per day of the convention, but in return, we usually are able to get a badge for you and sometimes some additional perks.
And Alexandria RPG Library seems to have a pretty good relationship with the PAX universe.
Yes.
As it were.
Yes, indeed. So, as the events coordinator for the library, I've had a sort of a unique past and history with PAX itself. PAX is run as a very well-oiled machine where there is a staff that they call themselves the enforcers. Mm-hmm. I myself have been an enforcer since 2008. So I have a very long and deep relationship with the PAX shows themselves, so that when the library came into existence, and we didn't say this, it started at a convention in Seattle in 2017 at Emerald City Comic-Con, and that's also where PAX West happens to take place. Because of my long-standing relationship with PAX, we were able to bring the library into the show there. And it just so happens that when PAX goes to its other conventions, we happen to live close to their warehouse. They are very generous and allow us to take these 500, 600 books that we bring to a show, load it onto a pallet, and they will ship it for us to conventions like PAX Unplugged here in Philadelphia, so that we don't have to incur the charges of shipping that material around ourselves. If we had to ship it ourselves, likely we wouldn't be at the show.
And one of the things that I find interesting is you don't charge for anything, it seems. No. You're contemporaneously running a crowdfunding campaign to improve your storage facilities and so on.
Yes.
Why don't you charge?
Well, we don't charge because we're ourselves community-based and we are fans. And we feel that in order to have these games be exposed as wide as possible, we want to lower the barrier as much as possible. And what lower barrier is there to free? So we are purely donation-based. We offer some items in compensation for people who happen to donate to us, but we really feel that we're a community-based and grassroots organization. We are not doing this as a business. We're not trying to make a profit out of it. We're just in it for the love of role-playing games.
I still think for an event where you're paying $85 for a badge and $160 for a hotel, getting $5 per person game makes people show up and help support your operations. That is just the cold-hearted spreadsheet jockey within me.
Oh, we would be in a much better position if we were to do that, but we're pretty committed to the fact that we want it to be as friendly and accessible as possible.
Okay. So you have your organization. Where do you want to see it grow? What do you consider to be the lacunae in either your offerings as a library or your offerings as what games you run?
Well, as far as offerings as a library, we would love to actually be a quote-unquote library itself. Right now, we're more of a showcase. We pretty much only show up at conventions.
Okay.
We would love to have a way and a presence to, one, have a physical location that people can come and visit, say in the Pacific Northwest where we happen to be near the Seattle area. We would love to have an actual office space where people can come in and the library will be permanently set up, and people will be able to come in and use the room there to run games themselves or borrow books. Well, we have an idea where through our Patreon, we would love to have a certain pledge level where if you're at a certain tier in our Patreon, you would be able to have a book mailed to you so that you can have a campaign that you run at your own house checked out to you for, say, 3 to 6 months while you run that campaign. Then you would mail that back to us. So it would actually be a circulating library where we would be able to send the materials to a GM so that they can run the campaign using these materials.
And God bless U.S. media mail rates. Trying to send
Yes,
anything
indeed.
around Europe is nearly impossible. So you've mentioned your offerings. What are some upcoming events that you will be at, and how can we support support your operations?
So upcoming events we have. So this is it for the rest of the 2024 calendar year.
I'd be impressed if you had much more.
But in 2025, we're in sort of hibernation until around March.
Okay.
And at that point, we begin with beginning of March 7th, I believe, is Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle. About a month after that, we have Sakura Con, also in Seattle. Norwest Con, which is in SeaTac. Those are both on Easter weekend, and they happen in the Seattle area as well. After that, then we come back to the East Coast. We go to PAX East in Boston in the beginning of May.
Awesome. And you had mentioned a Patreon, and I mentioned a crowdfunding effort to upgrade your facilities.
Yes.
Where can we find more information about those?
So you can always go to our website, which is alexandriarpg.com, and we have a list of our media and social links there. One of the links in that is to our Patreon, also to our Discord, where we are highly active and welcome people to join and discuss with us, not only just role-playing games in general, but how to be more involved with the organization.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mage fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson with Mage the Podcast. And joining me today is designer of, probably best known for Brindlewood Bay among my audience, Jason Cordova, or Cordova, depending on where the emphasis goes. Jason, how's your PAX Unplugged going?
It is going really well. It is very busy, and it's my first PAX. It's actually the first convention that I've been to in my professional capacity as a game designer. And but I'm really enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun.
As a Philadelphia native, I hope it's being kind to you.
Yeah, I've gotten to really know a very, very tiny corner of downtown Philadelphia really well.
Yes, as I'm fond of saying, Philadelphia is like Chicago if it hated you. But you have a number of games with you, and the one I am most familiar with is Brindlewood Bay, which is a interesting attempt at combining two things we don't often see together, the mythos and cozy.
The mythos-ish.
Yeah.
It's
mythos
kind of
adjacency.
Yeah, it's kind of the mythos aspect is actually kind of a weird Lovecraftian version of Greek myth.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly, yeah. But no, you're right. Yeah, it's cozy, it's creepy. We like to say that it's Murder, She Wrote meets H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu, She Wrote, if you will. Yeah. And
the major supplement to it, Nephews in Peril, I feel that title does a pretty good job of trying to describe what you're going for.
If you have watched Murder, She Wrote, especially the first couple seasons, you know that Jessica Fletcher spends a lot of time getting her nephew Grady out of trouble.
Yes.
So
what is the core contrivance of the game, and what do you play in it?
So in Brindlewood Bay, you play a group of elderly women, the Murder Mavens, who are in this book club called the Murder Mavens, and they read mystery books, and that's kind of their passion. But they also use their skills from mystery book reading to actually investigate murders happening in their town. They investigate all these murder mysteries, and they eventually realize that they're all connected by this supernatural conspiracy. There's this cult called the Midwives of the Fragrant Void, who are trying to raise a dark child of Persephone from the ocean in order to, cause madness and terror in the world.
That I assume smells like lavender, based on your description.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
And those characters, one of the problems with a lot of investigation games is, or at least early attempts is, well, I want to look at the book. Okay, roll. You fail to look at the book.
Right.
How does investigation work in this game?
So Brindlewood Bay features what I believe is a pretty innovative mystery mechanic, investigation mechanic. So the way it works is nobody at the table, including the keeper, the GM, knows what the solution to the murder mystery is.
Okay.
The only way you know is the players will collect clues, and then at the end, you get together and you just talk about the clues that you found, and you try to come up with a theory of the case based off what clues you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like A Town Called Malice, your goal is to create a through line.
Yeah, I would say so. It's a little bit like being, to some degree, you're kind of like writing the story. You're kind of writing the mystery as you go.
Okay.
Your murder mavens are solving the mystery, but you as players are kind of saying, okay, we've got these 6 clues, and what do we think it means? And then based off how many clues you work into your theory, that determines how good your die roll is to see if you're correct or not.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's very collaborative, and it's very thematic, and it's very much about like everybody at the table, we're getting together to tell the best possible story that we can.
So what does, as you had mentioned, Nephews in Peril is a setup for additional mysteries.
Right.
What do you provide? What affordances are given to help set up that initial mystery scape?
Yeah, so basically the way it works is when you do a full campaign of Brindlewood Bay, you're looking at about 15 total sessions of play, which is about 6 mysteries or so. And essentially, the way it goes is you kind of go through, and we have one mystery that comes in the core book that we recommend you always start with.
Yeah.
You always start with this one. It's called Dad Overboard. After that, you can do pretty much any murder mystery, either one of the other 5 that are in the core book, or one of there's about 15 or 20 in Nephews in Peril for murder mysteries. So you can kind of choose. So you can kind of choose like mysteries that interest you, mysteries that are maybe a little more creepy, mysteries that are maybe a little more cozy. So you can kind of shape your campaign as the keeper in that way. Nephews in Peril also features a new type of mystery called a sweeps week mystery, which is more supernatural and is better as like a 1-shot or a 2-shot or like a side story. Yeah.
Do you feel that mystery setup and resolution mechanic is something that if someone grabbed this, they could just pick it up and drop it into their Dungeons and Dragons game or their vampire game? Or
they 100% could. So the thing is, apart from just the mystery mechanics, Brindlewood Bay has a lot of like other mechanics in it that sort of encourage collaborative storytelling. And those mechanics are very, very easy to port over to another game, any game, because they're purely narrative, right? There's not a lot of hard crunch on it. It's all just...
It's not like it ties specifically to a number on your character sheet. I have a 4 in cluesmanship.
Exactly. No, it's all narrative. It's all discussion. And so you can transfer a lot of that stuff. But yeah, like even in Call of Cthulhu, instead of like you failed to read the book, instead of like having that situation, you can just put that book or the information in the book anywhere in the scenario, and if they are searching, they can find that key information no matter where they're looking, right?
Does the game provide affordances to keep track of clues?
Every table will kind of do it differently.
Okay.
When I'm running the game, I like to just use index cards. But some people will actually do like full-on murder boards, where they like, use string to connect all the clues
red string,
and stuff. Yeah. So, but the basic idea is just, the clues are no more than like a phrase or a sentence, and so you can kind of track them however is easiest.
And presuming that you're grandmothers, this either implies to me that you are super powered, there is a Dungeon Crawl Classic style funnel where not every granny makes it out alive, or this is not a combat-centric game where shootouts take place frequently. Where in that trichotomy does it land?
Combat, I would not say, is a major feature of Brindlewood Bay.
Okay.
There are a couple of Maven moves that are a little bit more action-oriented.
Got it.
But combat would be a pretty rare occurrence, I would say.
So you use the term move. Does this break down to something that is in the family of Powered by the Apocalypse?
It does.
Got it.
It definitely does. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse chassis with what I call carved from Brindlewood narrative mechanics. So
got it. So right now the game consists of Brindlewood Bay and Nephews in Peril.
Correct.
Are there any other things in the Brindlewood Bay universe currently, or that are planned to be out soon?
Well, so all of our other games, or most of our other games, are in the same universe.
Okay.
And so
please tell me that includes Trophy.
It does not include Trophy, actually.
Okay.
That would be amazing. But
yes.
We have a few other what we call carved from Brindlewood games. We have The Between, which is about monster hunters in Victorian era London. It is, strictly speaking, in the same world, but it's in the past.
Okay.
In actuality, my personal canon is that Brindlewood Bay is a TV show in this world. And so you're kind of playing like it's a very meta thing. We also have Public Access, which is an analog horror game, which is very much set in the same universe. It has a lot of, they sort of Easter egg each other a lot.
Okay.
A lot of references.
Got it. So I know the PDF for Public Access is available on DriveThruRPG. I picked it up when it's on sale. Fantastic. Is there any plans to make a Dead Tree version of that?
Yes. We're going to be kickstarting that probably in April.
Okay.
Yep, that's the plan.
Got it. So again, we spoke about Trophy. What is that?
Oh, Trophy. Okay, so Trophy is a game not by me. I'm just the publisher, but it's by Jesse Ross. And it's actually 2 games. It's Trophy Dark and Trophy Gold. Broadly speaking, Trophy is about treasure hunters going into the dark and forgotten places of the world, places that don't want them there. And, they go to try to take all the treasure, but that place will eventually destroy them. We like to call it a play-to-lose game. It's all about
how does the descent into madness go?
Exactly,
how do I meet my grisly
brought
end?
Down by your hubris, right? Like that's kind of the idea. If you are the kind of person who loves horror, if you love A24 style horror especially, Trophy is your jam. It is bleak and madness and terror in all the best ways.
Is the world that way, or merely the areas that are explored in the game?
It's mostly the incursions, but the world is very much tainted by it. So the world, it's a little bit like, if you're familiar with like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, those worlds are all like right after a huge catastrophe. It's a similar thing. There's been this like big catastrophe, and the people who are now in this world are kind of just picking up the pieces. So it has a sort of vaguely apocalyptic kind of bleakness to it, but there are occasional moments of levity and light. They're rare, but
Yes.
they're there. Yeah.
And is that dark fantasy, urban fantasy, historical fantasy? What kind of world is
it
that
would
in?
be dark fantasy. We
Okay.
call it fantasy. Horror fantasy is what we
Okay.
call it, because it's very like, it's not just like dark. It's really about like the themes of like horror and horror subgenres. Yeah.
What is the game as a creator that you wish you could make, but you just don't think the audience exists for it? My personal one is I want a Powered by the Apocalypse game where you're all characters in Joan Didion's California
Yes.
in the 60s. I don't know how it would
I
work.
would play the hell out of that. By
Exactly.
The way. That was
It's
so
one of
good.
the-
Yeah, I would play that.
I refer to those as Fred Armisen games.
Yeah.
No one would play it except for other game
I love it.
designers.
I think it's so good. A couple years ago, I would have said Brindlewood Bay, but
here we are, and you have
yeah.
literal cases of product, and the Kickstarter for it was quite
It's going
successful.
great, yeah. I've had this idea of making a game about, it's kind of like Dead Poets Society, like a game that takes place at a boys' school in the 1950s. That's just about like the experience of being like a boy in a repressive environment. I just think it's like an interesting theme and topic. I don't think anybody would play that, but I would love to make it though.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the Powered by Insoles engine that comes out the other end of it.
Exactly,
But,
precisely. Yes.
If we're interested in picking up these items or following your works, where can we do that?
Gauntlet-rpg.com.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Awesome. And do you have a presence on social media where you log your
Yeah,
development process?
we are at Gauntlet RPG on Bluesky and
Good
Twitter.
answer, good
Yeah,
answer.
Yeah, we are technically on Twitter.
Yeah.
Mostly we're doing a Bluesky these days. So.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time,
Hey,
and
thanks
best
so
of luck
much.
at PAX.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, Mage fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson with Mage the Podcast, reporting from day 3 of PAX Unplugged, 3 miles into my own backyard. Joining me now is the feckin' creator of what I can only describe as dozens of games, Spencer Campbell. Spencer, how's your PAX going?
It's been really, really good. This is my favorite convention. Absolutely my favorite convention.
I'm glad. It's honest about what it is. Yesterday, the dealer's room had a certain piquant funk to it that seems to have either I've gotten used to it or it seems to have dissipated today. Either way, I'm pleased that that's the aroma environment that we're currently in. So what kind of games do you make?
I make indie tabletop role-playing games. So I make role-playing games that are based off of my own systems, and I run the gamut in terms of genre. I do diceless, I do things with dice, I do things that are for one-shots, I do things for long campaigns. I started doing game design about 4.5 years ago, and I can't stop.
Yeah, it seems, based on the output in your description, it kind of seems like the composers I know that say, I write music because if I don't, it'll stay in my head until I die.
Yeah, I gotta get it out of my
Or
head.
somewhere between that and like a gland that needs to be expressed, or it may cause issues within the human body.
More or less.
You mentioned a shared system. What is that system?
The most common system across my games is the Lumen system, which
Okay.
is a system I designed, I think, about like 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, I remember about 2 years ago it was getting a lot of buzz in the indie world.
Yeah, it is my system that is my love letter to like action RPGs or looter shooter video games and things like that, where you are characters with a small suite of powers that really define what you're good at, and you just you kind of get to just do that thing over and over and over
Okay,
again.
so it's not a game where you only get to hit the button once a day.
Right. I want you to hit that button almost nonstop.
If you're the super fast guy, you always get to be super fast. If you're the sharpshooter, you're always hitting.
Exactly.
That was always one of the problems I had with games like games like Fate, where it's like, you're the best shot in the West twice a day.
Right,
And you're
exactly.
like, okay, that's like noted. And a lot of games claim to be lightweight. That is a term that I have discovered is absolutely meaningless. What is your interpretation of that? One is the fact that you can just say there's a core resolution mechanic that covers damn near anything. Dice pool building games, World of Darkness games, trade plus trade. You have a simple core mechanic. Another one is to just narrow the focus of play so that you can only do certain things, which is the Powered by the Apocalypse method. The other one is the thematic focus is so tight, you're probably not going to do a lot else. What does it mean for the Lumen system?
Well, for the Lumen system is very much designed to capture a particular type of experience at the table, like high energy, high action, power fantasy sort of stuff. That's not to say that it can't do other things. It's
Okay.
just when you try to do other things with that system, you could probably pick another system that would better
Got it.
serve those purposes.
So it sounds like it's not emulating a genre, but it's emulating a mood.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And we have that system established. You have a character with a definitively strong archetype. What are some of the games that you've built upon that, and kind of what's their deal?
Yeah, so probably most quintessential Lumen game is a game that I made called Nova. It's a sci-fi fantasy game set in a future where the sun exploded. Pieces of the sun came crashing into the planet, and we used those pieces of sunlight to build awesome mechs. And so you are the pilots of those mechs going out into this weird, twisted world, fighting off weird aliens and abominations, and it's very much like a power fantasy. You are these really cool mechs just wiping out waves and waves of enemies.
And all of these games seem to clock in at under 100 pages and about $25 seems to be the kind of core price point. What are some of the other games, and maybe one that you wish got a little bit more love?
The other ones that I love, there's one called Nest that I really love. It's a relatively recent game of mine, and it's doing the Lumen stuff, but in a diceless way.
Okay.
And I get excited about diceless games, but a lot of people really love their dice, and so when you say diceless, they go, no, I'm not interested in that. But I think there's ways to make diceless and still have like a chewy game experience that you don't have to sort of lose all of that by simply removing dice.
And what is kind of the contrivance of Nest?
In Nest, it's set in the same setting as Nova that I just described, but instead of playing as the good guys, you're some of the bad guys.
Okay.
You're these weird alien bird people, essentially, going on a prolonged assassination mission. And so you're going through sort of a web of missions to try and hunt down a target.
Okay. And you had mentioned a number of non-Lumen games. What are those, and what's kind of the pitch for those?
The other stuff that I have that's non-Lumen, probably the two that are most popular or that are known are Slayers and Rune. Slayers is my monster hunting game. The thing that makes it special is that it's an asymmetrical game. What I mean by that is every class in that game has a very distinctly different rule set when it comes to combat.
Okay.
So like truly asymmetrical between these classes. So everyone's kind of got their own mini game when a fight breaks out. And so you really get to feel like your class is special because the dice and how you're rolling them and what you're doing with them is so different than what your neighbor is doing that it feels cool in that regard. The other one is Rune, which is a solo tabletop role-playing game, but I would say it's a chewier, more game-like experience. It's my love letter to the Souls-like genre, so your Elden Rings, Dark Souls, Bloodborns, things like that. It has sort of environmental storytelling, but then also brutally difficult tactical combat that's a little bit more like almost like a rhythm game or a puzzle-solving scenario rather than just like beating down somebody with a big hit point pool.
And again, with seemingly dozens of games in front of me, is this something where you try and figure out something that you think hits a certain moment in the market, or is it just the fact that your ideas have proven to be so fecund and disparate?
I mean, for me, I'm not necessarily looking to see what people are interested in the market at the time. It's just whatever is plaguing my mind at the time and that I have to get down on the page. And, you know, I'm in a space now where I'm making a lot of games that are like set in the same setting, but from different interpretations of it, which has been a really fun space. So rather than sort of creating new worlds, new everything every single time, instead saying, okay, I've got this established setting, this established premise. What if we look at it from a totally different angle? And that's been really satisfying for me.
Do you also serve as publisher for the games?
Yeah, I do it all. Well, I shouldn't say all. I write the words, and then I get an editor for them, and I hire artists and everything. But yeah, I do all the print runs and sell it out of my store and everything like that.
What is the game that is currently gnawing at you that we may get to see in the future, or a direction that you kind of wish that you feel is underexplored?
Well, the game that's inside me that has to get out is a game that's the playtest name for it is a game called Dragon Slayers, which is taking that Slayer stuff that I talked about earlier, bringing it to that high fantasy game. It is my heartbreaker game, or it's my game that I want to like pull D&D players out of the D&D sphere and like try something else. So I figured, let me show them a mechanical system that's very different, but also has the trappings of what they might expect a fantasy game to have as sort of an off-ramp into the indie RPG space. So that's something that I'm actively playtesting right now and will be out next year.
And would you say that your games in general are intended for a certain number of sessions where you say, hey, this really does great 2 to 7, or this is an exceptional one shot, or 2 years, this is going to be really ripping?
Yeah, I always say that I'm not trying to design somebody's forever game.
Yeah.
I very much am designing games that are either for that one shot or that few shot experience, like a nice 3-session arc or 3 to 5 session arc. You've told the satisfying story. You can put the book back up on the shelf, and hey, If you want to bring it down later on and you tell a whole new story, that's cool. But yeah, my games are not there really to do the like year after year after year sort of thing.
As with many games, the critical resource is finding enough GM, storytellers, game facilitators. What affordances do you feel your games provide that make that an easy experience?
Yeah, so, like most RPG books, I've got that GM section in there with advice. I think my advice usually is maybe a bit different than a lot of other books because I'm not very prescriptive in terms of how to run games. I don't have lots and lots of resources in the books in terms of GMs like rolling on tables or looking those things up. I'm very much trying to encourage GMs to release that power or that responsibility to the table because I have found that GMs get burned out from trying to learn whole new games and whole new worlds and then trying to do all that stuff. But if you put a little bit of that power in the players' hands, that's also how you get players invested in trying a new game because you have to get past that hurdle of learning a new rule system in the first place. But now if you're saying, yeah, you got to learn these rules, but you're also going to be able to like help us build this experience, that's a fun way to get people into it.
So is world building part of the game setup process then, or?
For a lot of my stuff, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff that's about like establishing norms and expectations for the game.
And finally, if any of these sound interesting, where can we get them?
You can find all of my stuff at GilaRPGs.com. That links to my Shopify page where you can get physical books, my itch page where you can get the digital versions, and all the other stuff where you can find me.
And if someone buys that, is there a pretty good chance that you're the one who put it in the box or envelope and sent it out into the world?
I'm absolutely the person who packed that and brought it over to the post office.
Got it. I stick with Robin Law's definition of a large publisher in the indie space, which is the moment you have a full-time employee that is not the founder.
Yeah.
And Spencer, if we're curious to follow your game design journey, do you have a social media presence?
Yeah, it's basically just on Bluesky these days. So if you search for Gila RPGs on Bluesky, you can find me. But I do sporadically do design streams on Twitch, which also is Gila RPGs, and a lot of my stuff ends up on YouTube then, which is also Gila RPGs. So you can find a lot of my video content, which is like just open book design discussions online there.
Okay. Links to these will be in the show notes.
Fantastic.
Spencer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Even though this podcast is dedicated to Mage the Ascension, we learn more about the technologies of gaming and how we might use them at our own tables through discussion with designers and noted ludologists for all systems. Such investigations are supported by our executive producers, to whom we'd like to extend an extra special thanks. You can join their ranks by signing up at www.patreon.com/magethepodcast for a shout-out of your very own, because a podcast needs earballs like a game needs one or more players. Today's appreciation goes out to the following people, beginning with the oracles of various useful tools and innovations in tabletop life. Bad Company, Oracle of the Retractable Pencil. Buck Gregory, Oracle of the Grid-Based Battle Map. Christopher Phillips, Oracle of the Percentile Dice. Derek Semsick, Oracle of the Crowd Fund. Drawncap, Oracle of the Virtual Tabletop. Drunkades, Oracle of the Overpriced Miniature Figurine. Jason Vines, Oracle of the Bowl of Cool Ranch Doritos in the middle of the table. Rebecca Poole, Oracle of the Cardboard Screen for Storyteller, Dungeon Master, or whomever. Sean Gallagher, Oracle of the Fillable PDF Character Sheet, Spartacus, Oracle of the Blue Book, and the crew of Erebus, Oracle of the Session Zero. As well as Archmaster Berto, Archmaster Brout of the Blue, Archmaster Dan Svensson, Archmaster Glacial Indifference, Archmaster Jeff Waugh, Archmaster Leroy Bryce, Archmaster Morgan Oran, Archmaster Wolf Larryson, Alex, Alexia, Amber Version, Andrew Zess, Ben Bandelo, Blaze Hibbert, Bruno Teixeira, Bryce Perry, Bubba the Pale One, Chartan, Sig, Curtis Hendricks, Daniel Cuppin, Daniel Scribner, Darren Hennessy, David Roy, Ian Robertson, EPG, Eric Schwenk, George Lara, Gray Churlig H, Guy Stewart, Ia Bull, Jade Baroth, James B, Jason Kennedy, Jenna F, Jeremy Z, Jarvis Johnson, Kathleen Halpern, Kevin Fitzpatrick, Chris Kinner, Leslie Weatherstone, Laws and Stuff, Lauren Jensen, Manal Canos, Matthew Proyle, Maurice Hopkins, Melissa Krause, Michael Parker, Nabero, Nikita Klaymanov, Patrick McNamara, Rob H, Ryan Kendi, Ryan Stray, Samuel Tobin, Sevenessis, Shell Conch, Starfish, Stephen Carton, Tyler Bryan, Will Vincent, and Igard. If you super liked this episode or super didn't, drop us a line at magethepodcast@gmail.com or talk to us at magethepodcast.bisky.social on Bluesky. We also have a hop-in Discord community at discord.me/magethepodcast. If you like us, please give us a review on the platform of your choosing or tell a friend about us. Also go to magethepodcast.com for show notes and all of our previous shows, for the road is long and ascension awaits.